All right, Jake. Well, thank you so much for doing lunch therapy.
My pleasure. So happy to be here. Love.
Yeah.
I'm a big luncher.
Oh, good. Well, it's so funny because I did a call out to my readers or my followers on Instagram last week, and I asked who should I have on lunch therapy, and the first response I got was Jake Cohen's biceps.
Oh my God. I mean, it's hot girl summer. You gotta be ready.
So, what are you doing? Are you like lifting weights? Are you doing push-ups? Are you doing some kind of special Pilates? People want to know.
It is a little bit of everything. I think it was that kind of like a natural snowball of like everyone else in quarantine. Peloton became like my obsession. Like I joined the cult, very into it. And from there, as COVID is kind of like, again, who knows what's happening by the time this come out, we could be back in lockdown with the
God, I
Delta.
hope
But
not. Yeah.
I mean, but once kind of like our gym was back to no mask, we were like, all right, let's get a trainer now. Let's keep this momentum going.
Mm-hmm.
Rejoin Equinox. Like now it's like 6 days a week working out,
6 days a
routine.
week? That's so much. I just rejoined Equinox too, and I go 5 days a week, but I guarantee you I don't work as hard as you do.
I love the classes, big ropes and rowers guy, like
No, no.
Metcon,
I
anything
don't
where it's like
I don't want
the
anyone
energy.
looking at me while I exercise. Like the idea of someone watching me exercise is the most mortifying thing. So I just put my headphones on, I get on a treadmill, I run. I used to be able to run 3 miles in 30 minutes, which was pretty good.
That's
And
great.
but now I'm like, I do like a mile in 10 minutes and then I kind of slow down and just like walk.
And I will say the saving grace of all of this, and as a born and bred New Yorker, the one thing, especially coming from a Jewish family, the one thing that you would never do as a native New Yorker is ride a fucking bike in the city. Like who does that? My mother would kill me.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic happened, and I got the city bike membership, started biking around. I'm so obsessed. I think New York has also done an incredible job putting a lot of funds towards revamping bike lanes and having them be like super like big and divided off from the street. And it's been the easiest way to get around the city. So nice to just like have that outdoor experience. And then on top of it, it's like it gives me an excuse to wear like athleisure wear to every meeting I have. It's like
so,
I biked here. What do you expect?
so what does your mom think of that?
She's I mean she's just is. She doesn't really love it, but especially Alex. Alex hates it.
I hate it
Um,
too. I mean, whenever I drive my car in LA, which admittedly is different than New York, and there's like a bicyclist in the street, I'm like, you are going to die. Like, be careful. Like, I'm so terrified for bicyclists on the streets of LA, especially like with the ones that are like in traffic, like weaving in and out. I'm like, what are you doing? We're
no,
going
no,
like
yeah.
40 miles per hour.
Have you
Um,
seen what was it? Is it Taxi? The one, not Tax, the one with Jimmy Fallon and Queen Latifah and
oh,
Giselle
yeah.
Bundchen, like where it was that this. I loved it. It was such a great movie, and Jennifer Esposito. It was Jennifer Esposito's
I
best
think
piece of
you're
work.
the only one in the world who thinks that's a really good movie, but keep going.
It's a great movie, but there's this opening scene of like this biker and they're like going around the city and jumping off the bridge and onto a truck and then onto it was like parkour craziness and then like it the helmet comes off and it's Queen Latifah.
Oh, that's
And
hilarious.
that
Okay.
is not how I'm biking. It's very much a leisurely thing.
Yeah. So you build in exercise naturally into your day as you go to meetings, as you have things you just hop on the bike. I mean, that's what I feel like Robert Sietsema, is that who it was? Like one of the food writers in New York famously like, just like, rides his bike everywhere. Oh, no, not him. What's his name? Michael Musto, the gay gossip columnist. I used to always see him on his bike going around New York. So it's a great character thing. If you live in New York, it's like you become that guy on the bike.
Love it.
Well, Jake, we're not quite ready to do your lunch therapy yet. We banter for the first 10 minutes in case you weren't familiar. But before we get to the actual therapy, I wanted to ask you about your book, because for people who are listening who don't know, you have a book out called Jewish that is taking the world by storm. And I wanted to know, like, how does it feel to have a book out? How's the experience been? Are you enjoying it?
Yes, I am enjoying it now. I will say if every part of writing a book, and you know this, you've done it before, you're doing it now. Every part is a different type of hell. Because you're putting so much work into it, so much energy, both physical and emotional, that I think it really, really took a toll on me having the launch happen still in like lockdown, where everything was virtual. I couldn't see people. And this book was so personal because all of the recipes were tested and developed at Shabbats and with this intention about gathering and sharing with others and people that you love.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it gave me this opportunity to really just put my head down and focus on it being a success, which I'm very blessed that it was. And I think it's become a little bit bigger than me. I think that there's this concept, I'm sure you've heard this like in your family or whatever, of like when people talk about figures or people, places, things, and it's either good for the Jews or bad for the Jews.
Sure, of
Like
course.
like Ben Shapiro, bad for the Jews. Jay
Right.
Cohen, always wanted to say something that was like good for the Jews.
Right, right.
So like I got the call from my editor when it made the Times list, which was like
Amazing.
no one expected that to happen. And one of the things that the first thing she said was like, I don't think a Jewish cookbook has ever made the list before.
Oh my God. Joan Nathan is like punching her screen right now.
I mean, no, to her defense, like, and I love Joan. She blurbed the book. She's an
I'm
icon.
just kidding. I didn't mean to
No,
bring
no,
it up.
no, 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 no. But it's because there wasn't that designation.
Yeah.
Like cookbooks didn't have their own category, so no cookbooks really made the bestseller
Oh,
list
I see.
until.
Okay. Got it.
So for the majority of her books, it was just in
Right. She
up
would have been
against
there. She
everything.
would have been there. But
She would
you're
have
the
been there.
first. But you've done such an amazing job of. I mean, my mom is a bigger fan of yours than she is of mine. Like truly, she's like, why don't you do what that Jake Cohn's doing and make some Jewish food? But I feel like you've like wait. What you've done so well is like you chose your niche, but your niche is authentic to who you are. So it's not like you're pretending to be really into Jewish food. Like you are really into Jewish food, but you found a way to like make it really fun and personal. And I guess my only question for you is like, do you think eventually you want to break out of that niche and like do like Italian food or do like a cookbook of like, Polish recipes or something?
So that is a very interesting question because I do think that there's two sides of that. Will I always be focusing on just Jewish food? No, because every day I'm interested in something else. However, what I will say is when I pitched this book, which was kind of a result of hosting Shabbat and starting to really find this passion around Jewish identity and food, and this opportunity to fill a void in the market,
Mm-hmm.
it unlocks something that I wasn't really expecting. When you think about everyone in food and what they're taught, and if they were really passionate and follow all the steps. I went to CIA, I worked at 3 Michelin star restaurants and the trendiest spots in New York, and then I started paying my dues in test kitchens across media. Jewish food is not really reflected in that. You don't
Mm-hmm.
learn Jewish food in culinary school at the fanciest restaurants that are
No.
deemed good. It's not Jewish food. Even in publications, you get like 1 week around Passover and 1 week
Mm-hmm.
around Hanukkah, in which you can maybe have one story focusing Jewish chefs. And it honestly felt, and I've had a lot of other young Jewish chefs in this industry who are kind of shifting their focus to Jewish food and have connected with me. It felt like I finally understood what I was doing. I finally
Mm-hmm.
understood my voice because whether you like it or not, if you're raised in a Jewish household, religious or secular, so much of your life, your definitions of hospitality, your definitions of comfort food, your
Mm-hmm.
definitions of all of that are rooted in Judaism.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I finally accepted that that was something that was not only okay to lean into, but was something that was worthy of having the fancy cookbook spread with the resources
Mm-hmm.
behind it and have celebrities posting pictures of it and it not being just like, it's not kitschy, this is mainstream. And it's really emotional. I did a lot of crying. I think the whole process was like very tough, but it wasn't until like Rachel Ray, when I finally saw the segment, I did promotion on Rachel Ray, and you don't see like the intro or the outro because that's filmed separately. And it finally aired on TV, and she's like, she really like gave it a really heartfelt rave review. And I think part of it was the fact that she had never really seen a Jewish book like this
Mm-hmm.
presented in that way, and that made me super emotional. And I like was hysterically crying, but
Well, don't cry yet because your therapy hasn't started
I
yet.
know,
So
I
yeah,
know, I
save
know.
it.
But I think at the end of the day, it just there's so much more to do.
Yeah.
There's so much more to do in the realm of Jewish food and how broad the diaspora is. And if I
Mm-hmm.
could be a player to help navigate separate from myself, but again for the Jews and like push Jewish food and make it more popular and more mainstream, and a time right now in which we could use all of the good press we can get,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that's the best use of my time and my skill set.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting because it makes me think about the old gatekeepers because I watch PBS cooking shows every Saturday, and Chris Kimball has his Milk Street show, and he's just like this old, cranky, white, waspy guy. And I feel like he represents like the old guard of like who decided what was
Yeah.
tasteful, what was good. And he has his place in the firmament, don't get me wrong, but it feels like things are shifting in terms of like what kind of food is being put forward. I mean, the new issue of Bon Appetit, because I know they're struggling, but they're trying really hard now to reinvent themselves, is almost entirely food from other cultures,
Yeah.
but from cultures that aren't traditionally white cultures, or white Christian culture. So I feel like we're part of an exciting shift, and you're definitely riding that wave in a great way. So Mazel Tov, as they say. But
As they
now
say.
we must begin because you've stalled long enough. So Jake, what did you have for lunch today?
So I went to Two Hands. Have you been to Two Hands in the
No, what's
city?
that?
It's this Australian cafe, and it's very like shishi, and they do all these bowls, and they have this thing that I love called the Brassica bowl, and it's like all the charred broccoli and cauliflower with hummus and a poached egg, and it's like very light and bright and healthy, and kind of goes with my lady who lunches vibe, because I have throughout the pandemic, I think the biggest shift was that nights have become so sacred for me and my family, and like I don't like to go out, and I don't like big crowds, and I also at the same time love seeing people, and I thrive on that energy, which seems a little back and forth, but I've become just obsessed with like meeting people for breakfast or lunch meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if I want to see you, it's like, come, let's grab a bite. We'll go. Gertie has become my favorite in Brooklyn. I get like a bagel every
Ooh,
time
let's
of
go there
day.
when we have lunch next week. Let's do
Oh
it.
my God.
Yeah.
Wait, they might be close. I'm gonna check. If not, if
Okay.
they might, but I'm gonna plan a nice lunch for us.
Okay.
Don't you worry.
Wow. Okay. And by the way, I know I'm a professional lunch therapist and I shouldn't be having lunch with my clients, but we'll be done with our lunch therapy by the time that we have lunch. But well, the first thing that occurred to me, and this is something we talked about when you came on my Instagram live, but you mentioned health and healthy, and I think a lot of people are always curious with food writers and cookbook authors who have, in your book, you have recipes for kugel and recipes for, latkes and rainbow cookies. And so how do you, well, I guess, what is the role of healthy? What does healthy mean to you when you describe your lunch as healthy? What is your version of healthy?
My response to that is that this time of my life, which I'm actually also in the best shape of my life, which has been a strange feeling because I'm someone who's struggled with my weight my entire life. I was a very heavy kid, and it wasn't until I was much older, and then I've always fluctuated and yo-yoed, and I've done every diet, every cleanse, every restriction, and this is the first time in my life that I'm doing none of it. And it's been the best.
Mm,
So, yes, today I had a really healthy lunch. And then there's going to be a day in which I have a really indulgent. Oh my God, the night before, I had this great lunch today, 2 nights ago, or maybe it was last night. I lose track of time. I smoked too much weed. But I went to Loring Place for dinner with my father-in-law, and we went wild. We got the calzone, we got cheeseburgers.
right.
They said obviously he sends all the desserts. And to me, I never want to deprive myself, because like this is a great meal that I'm going to enjoy and savor. And then the next day, it's like great. I just don't do it every day.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, I
that
just
idea
saw,
of
yeah, I just saw Roxane Gay, the writer, has a newsletter, and she posted a clip from it that I just started reading about how she's had to unlearn ascribing like values to foods as like,
yeah,
this is good food, this is bad food, this is, because I think that's ultimately unhealthy because it's sort of makes you feel like, I struggle with this, which is, this happened to me yesterday. So like if I go to the gym and I go, I go like 5 days a week, and then I drink smoothies for lunch. Like, and I try to be quote unquote healthy. But if I skip a day of the gym, so I skipped it yesterday, I ordered a fried chicken sandwich for lunch, and it's like a snowball though. It's like now, like today, I had like a pastry and like a bunch of crap. So it's like I have a hard time sticking to or finding that balance, actually, like being able to say, like, I went to Lauren Place one night. Now I'm having a brassica salad for lunch.
I think the greatest lesson that I've like internalized is like this yoga saying that I did a lot of yoga in college and I became very close to my yoga instructor. I ended up moving into her mother-in-law's like apartment like for
Mm-hmm.
my senior year. It was a whole thing. But the idea of like breathing and having your like mind empty and meditations of clearing your mind and focusing on one thing. And the response is always your mind is going to wander. And when it does, don't beat yourself up, just bring it right back to
Mm-hmm.
focus. And I've used that kind of mentality towards my approach to food and eating and diet and exercise because there are going to be days when I wake up and you know what? I feel like shit. I don't want to go to the gym or it's raining out. And if so, it's like, I'm not going to go to Equinox. I'll do a quick Peloton class. Sometimes I get on the bike for Peloton and I'm just not feeling it. And like 5 minutes in, I'm just like, Cody Rigsby, I love you, but you fucked up on this one and I'm out. And I just give myself permission for all of that because my value is not dictated by a workout or a meal or a caloric intake. And it's like, I'm not trying to tell anyone how they should live their life or how they should treat it, but it's also quite triggering. And you know what it could be like to have a lot of old Jewish women sliding into my DMs being like, you don't really eat that. How can you eat that and be so scared? It's almost like it's shaming me
Yeah.
for my lifestyle, which
I hope
I
my
think
mom wasn't
is
one of them.
no. But that's something that a lot of people will comment on things like,
Oh yeah.
there's no way you eat this stuff.
I get
And
that all the time. I mean, maybe not as much as you, but like people are like, how do you, I get that like constantly. Like, how do you eat like this and not weigh 500 pounds? Like, how do you eat pasta twice a week? And
we got to
it's,
stop that. That question's
yeah,
got to
it
go
is a
out.
bad question. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you, I mean, emotionally growing up overweight or chubby or however you described yourself, I mean, when you go back into that frame of mind or you return to those feelings, I mean, did you was it was that a huge issue for you? Was it something you struggled with in terms of like how you felt about yourself every day? Were you aware that you were chubby, or was it something that, and does it affect you now?
I mean, yes, I think it's I feel like I know a lot of people that were chubby and have gotten into shape. And I think there's that mentality that you're always going to be that chubby kid because
Mm-hmm.
in those formative years of connection and uh, community building and friendship building, that was always part of the equation. And you throw on the fact that I was this chubby queer kid in the closet, also
Mm-hmm.
a Jew, and it's just like, all right, I am so much the other that I just felt a lot of shame around everything in terms of my identity. And it wasn't until it's really actually funny, like, and I mean, it's not funny, not all of this can be quite traumatic, but in high school, it was probably not until my end of the summer between my junior and senior year, I pretty much just like went crazy. And I was just like, I'm gonna make this change. And I started going to the gym probably twice a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost a crazy amount of weight. And I really leaned into cooking and starting to throw these like little dinner parties for my friends. I started building this community. I
Mm-hmm.
started having more interactions with the quote unquote cool kids. And I went from being just a nerd to someone that had some social standing, which is in
Mm-hmm.
the grand scheme of life, like not important because all those cool kids have amounted to nothing. But which is funny because there were a couple of gay kids. Actually, I only really know one other. There's like one other kid in my class, both gay. We're not out in high school, and both of us are probably the most successful of like the graduating class, just because I feel like when we came into that tower of
Mm-hmm.
our own identity, it just kind of snowballed from there. But I think it was something that has followed me my entire life. When I was working at Danielle, I gained a lot of weight because I would get off these crazy like 20-hour days and go and just buy a pint of ice cream and eat it alone in my apartment. And then when I worked at ABC, I lost a lot of weight because I was struggling with like a digestive issue
Mm-hmm.
and working like such crazy hours on the line, just like I was dropping meat like crazy. And then it's fluctuated throughout the years, different test kitchens. There have been different people that I've worked with that have made some incredibly harmful body comments towards me that
No.
have definitely affected that. Uh, in the same way that there have been a lot of comments about me being Jewish. It's there are things that they probably, all these people, I'm not going to even give the satisfaction of naming names, but it's just like these are people that probably have given zero thought or headspace towards these comments that they've made towards me,
Hmm.
and yet I will know them verbatim probably for decades to come.
Oh yeah, you never
That's what
forget
happens.
the mean things. I got teased in middle school when I was in PE. This is a really like painful memory, but what's so
This
funny
is
about
therapy. It's
yeah,
therapy.
it is sorry, but it's so funny. Mine wasn't because I was fat or because I was gay. It was because I was horrible at sports, and this kid, like this cool kid in the locker room, started calling me Alfredo for no reason. He was like, "Yo, Alfredo, you suck," and I was like, "Huh?" And then that just became the thing. Like people are like, "Alfredo, you suck." And it's like this kind of bullying, and it was just like I would have nightmares at night. And I think for me, like coming out of that was less about body positivity and stuff. It was more about being funny. Like I think somehow it made me like become funny and just like have a good sense of humor. And somehow like I pulled myself out of that and became a little more
Yeah.
popular by just having a good sense of humor. But it's like, but those traumatic incidents like never leave you. They're always at your core. But with you, I'm very interested. So I'm reading a book right now called Miriam's Kitchen. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
I think you'd really like it.
Yeah.
It's by this woman Elizabeth Ehrlich, whose mother-in-law is a Holocaust survivor, and it's about her going to cook with her mother-in-law and like learning her mother-in-law's recipes. And it's about her herself, like struggling with her Jewish identity. And like she's deciding whether she wants to be kosher and whether she wants to raise her kids kosher. And I just read a chapter where she goes to a mikveh. Is that what it's called? Where she
Yeah.
goes to a bath,
Ritual bath.
ritual bath. But I'm curious with you, like, what's your struggle been, or not struggle, but what's your journey been in terms of Judaism, in terms of ritual versus religion versus belief,
Yeah.
etc.?
Um, I grew up in a very secular household. We did not have Shabbat. I always refer to us as most people do, high holiday Jews, where it's like Passover, 100%. We're doing two seders. Rosh Hashanah, we're doing a seder. Yom Kippur, you'll find us a temple for the one time of the year. And my sister and I, like, we had to go to Hebrew school until we actually had a b'nai mitzvah
Are you guys twins?
together. No, but we are 13 months apart, so it worked out.
Uh,
So she was 12, I was 13.
did you have a theme?
Yes.
What was your
It
theme?
was it's so embarrassing because I think you've seen Keeping Up with the Steins, correct?
No, what's that?
Oh my God, one of the best movies ever. My niece just had her bat mitzvah and we made her watch it because it's with Daryl Sabara and Jeremy Piven and the mother from Everyone Loves Raymond,
Oh, Doris
uh,
Roberts.
Doris Roberts,
Yeah.
and even the one from Kill Bill is in it with the eye patch.
Oh, Uma Thurman.
No, with the eye patch.
Oh,
There's
Daryl
some
Hannah.
Daryl Hannah.
Yeah.
So everyone's in it about competing bar mitzvahs in LA,
Oh, I
and it's
would love
kind of
that.
keeping up with the Joneses thing, and that's really what it was. And I do think that my upbringing, my reflecting back, it was so just riddled in not what it should have been.
Yeah.
So ours was nautical themed, and it was on a yacht that went around the Long Island Sound. It was
Wait, the bar mitzvah was on a yacht?
yes.
Wow, swanky. My bar
Oh,
mitzvah theme, my mom got leftover Broadway decorations and leftover
always.
Yankees decorations. And she's like, your theme's going to be New York. And I was
I
like,
love it.
okay. But wait, back to you, your religious journey. So you had a b'nai
Yes.
mitzvah. Yeah.
And then we stopped. It was pretty much, that was always the rules. You had
Right.
to get to this point and then you can walk away, and we did. And there was a moment, I think, like my sister and I did Birthright together with a friend of mine, and she came back and she was actually really affected by it.
And we should tell people,
And
if they don't know, that Birthright is where is that where you do the march? That's not the March of the Living. This is
no, it's a 10-day sponsored trip by the state of Israel to bring anyone who is Jewish, half Jewish, connected to the land of the Jewish people, to have this trip to see the only Jewish state in the world.
Mhm.
And you go through it, and there are definitely issues with it, but at its core, it is about having people find this connection to Israel. And we came back, and she was going to school in Alabama for some reason. She was like rebelling, and like she had to get away from New York. And she realized like I can't be. There's no Jewish community here. She transferred to Baruch in Manhattan. She became kosher and Shomer Shabbos and all this stuff. And then it slowly unraveled, and now we're back at like equal levels. But one thing that was really key is when I met my husband, and again, I had just gotten out of a relationship with a non-Jew that lasted many years, and that was never really an issue. And so I was never really just like looking for a Jew. But because again, we're gay, so it's not like all the
Yeah.
rules are different for us in general. But then I got myself one, and the thing that was so fascinating is that our definitions of the rituals, our definitions of the foods were completely different. He's Persian Iraqi, even though his grandfather on his father's side is comes from an Ashkenazi family in New York, which is why his last name was Shapiro. The majority of his influence from family comes from his mother's side, which were Iraqi Jews that grew up in Iran. So he didn't know what babka was. He had never had gefilte fish before. His seders look completely different from mine. And I think as we started blending families and family traditions, it unlocked this first, I think, passion for me exploring this. And we were at the same time trying to build community in the city. We didn't have any friends. We didn't have any gay friends. That was a big thing. So we didn't have gay friends, and we wanted gay friends. But the issue is that we don't drink. We're as New York man, we're Cali sober. And where do you find gay people outside of a gay bar? And that was something we struggled with until we decided to start hosting Shabbat. And I found this awesome organization called One Table that helped kind of us figure it out and start hosting. And it was pretty immediate that we were building this queer Jewish community. And it wasn't just queer Jews, it was heterosexual Jews, it was queer Gentiles, like it was, everyone was always welcome at the table. But I think to start to build a small community of people that you really have these similar identities with was super important. And from there, it continued. And I think about like Jewish ritual, and we've made it our own. I'm going to show you, I'll turn the laptop. This is our ketubah, which we had a ketubah ceremony, which is the Jewish marriage certificate, with a gay Jewish rabbi that we love, named Matt Green, and he married us. And it was special and unorthodox because for an entire sect of our community, that's meaningless. And I think when you start with this already struggle to define meaning because we are outside of the box, it's obviously difficult, but it's also been such a blessing because it's really allowed us to make our own definitions of what Judaism can mean to us, what we want it to mean to us, how we want to incorporate rituals. I'm not kosher. We don't keep a kosher home. I am very adamant that we do Shabbat. We still watch TV. We still turn on the lights. It's to me, and again, some people get upset, and to each their own, but I can only do my work, and I think be successful at reaching others if I'm authentic to myself, and I'm not gonna like pretend I'm Yentl and go this
I wish
full
you
thing.
would. Yeah.
I mean,
just for the boat
if Babs calls, then...
Yeah. Well, there's a very wise scholar named Leah on the Real Housewives of New York,
of course,
who
she's converting right now.
She's converting, and she said she wanted to convert to Judaism because she needed structure in her life. And it's very interesting because as I'm in my 40s and I'm married to a director he's he's the opposite of, I mean, we both drink, but like he loves going to parties, he loves going out, like he loves, and I'm a little bit like you when you were talking about wanting to be at home at night. Like I'm a homebody. I like
dinner parties, dinner party, like that's the vibe, that's my life. That's it. That's
Craig loves that. He loves dinner parties, but he also loves to go, to a premiere, to this, to that. And I'm like, oh God. But that idea of like having a structure is very appealing, especially now that I'm in my 40s. Like the idea of like every Friday night I'm going to have a Shabbat and like light candles. And I guess I'm starting to understand that it's not necessarily, I mean, it's actually pretty relevant to a podcast about psychology because it's about giving your brain that feeling of safety, like that sense of like, I know it's going to happen. I can look forward to it. This is how it's going to be. These are the rituals, and I can feel calm about that.
One of the things that was most, I think, impactful was when I was exploring all of these rituals, I wasn't coming from a place of orthodoxy in which a lot of it is we do what we do because that's how we do it and it's how it's always been done.
Mm-hmm.
And to come at it as an adult, there was a lot of questioning, which is inherently a Jewish thing. And when you start to understand the why of these rituals, you're able to really connect to it on another level.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about Shabbat, the three things that most secular Jews would know off the top of their head: is the prayers for the candles, the wine, and
Mm-hmm.
the challah, even if they haven't done it since their bar mitzvah.
Borei Pri Hagafen's the wine, right?
Yes, correct. Hamotzi
Hamotzi
lachem
Chamin
haaretz.
Haaretz bread. Is that bread?
That's bread.
What's the candles?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Oh yeah, I know that one. Yeah. Okay.
But the reasoning. So we light the candles. It is the ignition of the Shabbat. It is what's designating this one day separate from the rest of the week. The wine is to sanctify it. It's this parallel, in a poetic way, of describing the transition from grapes, the mundane, into wine, the holy. And it's pretty much creating this designation as you're putting an intention that this day is holy, whether that's in a religious sense or just in an intention sense. That's your decision. And then the challah is the conduit for connection with others.
Mm-hmm.
Bread is what makes it a meal.
Breaking bread, yeah.
Yeah, which unfortunately I was using that, but then I did some research, and the term breaking bread is inherently Christian,
right?
Or
From
Catholic.
Jesus.
It's one of those. Yeah. But same idea.
He was Jewish. It's fine.
It's fine. and even still, like I listened to this incredible Jewish Torah podcast hosted by my favorite Disney Channel star when I was a kid. And
who's that?
Raviv Ullman from Phil of the Future.
No.
I mean, millennials know, because he was like it.
Okay.
And now he hosts this incredible podcast called The Study, and every week they go through the Torah portion, but really through a modern lens. And again, I don't go to services, I go to temple, but part of my Shabbat ritual is I listen to this podcast and learn a little bit about Torah. And one thing that came up that was so fascinating was this idea around gift giving. And it was talking about the secularization of the Jewish people, and this idea that so many of the neuroses that we associate in a very like Larry David Curb way for Jews, and the way that we act, it's all tied to Torah. And there is this section that they were covering about sacrifices and this cyclical idea in the Torah that anything that's gifted to you has to be given back. And it's very different from Christianity, in which it's gifts from God. And in the past, in the time of the first temple, that resulted in we were doing sacrifices and bringing lambs and all that stuff. And obviously the temple came down, they stopped doing that. But that mentality has stayed within our people for thousands of years. So now it would come out in the same sense of like, could you imagine showing up to a dinner party empty-handed?
Right.
Could you imagine going to like, I just think of I would go to my bar mitzvah, any birthday, my aunt would come to us afterwards. How much did my friend give you? Because I need to give that to her nephew.
Are you kidding? My mom has records of all that stuff. Still,
exactly.
Even from my wedding, like she's furious. It's like, you never tell me how much so-and-so gave you for your wedding. And it's like, I don't remember. I don't know. That's hilarious.
You think it's just like, oh, it's just quirky Jewish stuff, Jewish. No, it's actually all tied to the Jewish people and our rituals and traditions for thousands of years.
But I want to ask you about superstition versus, religion, because reading this book, like she's talking about trying to become kosher, and like the degree to which like she's trying to kosherize her kitchen, or what's the word, like make it not kashrut. Is it kashrut? No, that's not it. But parv, is that right? Parv?
No, parv just means it's not milk or meat.
Oh yeah, but like she's like scrubbing her bowls and she's like scolding, and it's like, if you miss a glass, I don't know. It just like, it feels like superstition to me. It feels like,
you bury it in the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, what's going to happen? Like, you're not going to get struck by lightning. I guess I have a hard time sometimes. And I say this as like someone as a kid who, when I was very Jewish as a kid, like I would be terrified of like doing something wrong, or I mean, I used to want to fast. This is so funny because my mom came on my podcast, And she maybe cut this part out because she was like, don't put this out there, but I'll say it here because she might actually listen to this one because you're on it. So sorry, Mom. But she got mad at me because I talked about how I used to try to fast for Yom Kippur because I was so nervous, but she would make me eat. She'd be so nervous about me starving myself that she'd like, you have to eat something. And she's like, don't put that out there. But anyway, yeah, you can answer my question now about superstition.
It's to each their own. I think there's this expression that my sister told me from one of her friends, this concept of take the fruit. And it was that it was a Jewish family, and every time they would go over, when they would leave, the grandmother would be like, "Oh, you're going to get hungry. Take a piece of fruit."
Right.
And there used to be fighting where she'd be like, "No, I'm not hungry. I don't want it. Don't give me the banana. I don't want to do it." And eventually, it was just like the mentality is take the fruit, even if you throw it out when you get out of the building. Take it, because I am a big believer um, in respecting other people's fantasies. And fantasy is not the right word, but just like
Right.
their
Beliefs. Their
their
beliefs.
beliefs, their
Yeah.
approaches, their quirks, their
Sure.
everything. Because I am like, I'm a quirky person. I have
Yeah.
plenty of faults. Like I would hope that people would respect my crazy as much as I want to respect
Mm-hmm.
other people's.
That's a good way to put
And
it. Yeah.
when you think about it, it's like this comes up a lot with like family, and again in the book you're reading, compared to my family and my grandmother, who was a hidden child in the Holocaust. And there are things that she does that are 100% related to this trauma of growing up, not only having that time of being a hidden child, but also having two parents who survived the camps. And it the inherited trauma is real. The way that it
Yeah.
affected her and my mother and now us,
Yeah.
um, it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And there is often a lot of times trying to change it, trying to better them. It's like, well, they're an adult, they do it. And I'm just always very much of the belief of like, they are who they are because of these experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And the best thing I can do is just accept them for who they are, and focus on not not causing a ruckus,
Right. And you believe
not
what you
not picking a
believe.
fight.
Yeah. And it's funny because as you were talking, I was just thinking about my own rituals that have nothing to do with religion. Like before I go to bed, like I've been writing in a journal for the past couple of years, and then I read a book, and it's like I do that every night because it's like that's how I fall asleep. And it's like it has nothing to do with religion, but it does have something to do with like the human condition of wanting routine and wanting to
Yeah.
familiarity. So I get that. But now, Jake, we need to delve deeper into your psychology. We're just scratching the surface. But I'm curious, like one thing we haven't talked a lot about, you mentioned being gay as a kid and being aware of that. But I'm curious, like with your religious upbringing, or I guess secular upbringing, but having been bar mitzvahed, and like what was your relationship to being gay in terms of your Judaism and your family? And was it something that was a struggle for you, or was it an easy thing to come out?
It was really easy to come out. I think the thing that was hardest was coming to terms with it internally. As
Mm-hmm.
soon as I came out, it was fine. And just I by the time that I grew up in Queens up until high school, pretty much, and then like bar mitzvah season, and then for bar mitzvah season we moved out to Long Island, and there just weren't people who were out, and it wasn't a community that felt like I had that permission. It was a
Mm-hmm.
community that I went from growing up in Queens, in which it was quite diverse, and being a white Jew was the minority, to all of a sudden being in a school where everyone is Jewish. And not only is that the case, but everyone is praising with like the idea of toxic masculinity, and these sports players. And it was very much that suburban
Sports players.
sports players. And again, I didn't do sports, I didn't do any of
Athletes.
that. But it was something that I started to kind of play around with, and not play around with in terms of like in my
Sure. No,
head,
I
not
get it.
like
I get
acting
it.
on it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it wasn't until my freshman year of college, and I think once I got out of that bubble and started interacting with gay people, it was pretty much
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh no, I'm also gay. Let's do this.
Where did you go to college?
The Culinary Institute of America.
Oh, right. That's really cool. So, what's it like? This is just sort of a sidebar, not psychologically relevant, but for people who are listening who've considered going to the CIA, Culinary Institute of America, what was that experience like for you?
It was incredible. It was really, really incredible. I think for me, especially because I was coming straight from high school and using this as my full bachelor's degree as a college experience. I think for other people who are potentially, there were a lot of people that were later in life, career changers. But I think to have that kind of structure and discipline put in at such a young age when I was just passionate but clueless was important, and it opened up so many doors. And I think I just really focused on being the best I could be.
Hmm.
And at the end, it's like then I started seeing like, all right, I actually don't like working in restaurants. Let's
Right.
pivot and go work in test kitchens. All right, I actually don't want to do this. I want to focus on that. And then it set the foundation for me. I was able to take a really great food writing course in my bachelor's studies that helped kind of set the
Who taught it?
Irina Chalmers, a James Beard Award winning writer who was also an incredible mentor to Aaron McDowell, who's also a CIA alum. And we were very close. We were very, very, very close.
Ah.
And I like brought her, I remember like when I got my first byline at Sever, I took the train up and brought her a copy of the magazine to
Ah, that's
show.
so sweet. I was gonna say we skipped a beat though because we didn't talk about you getting interested in cooking. Like, how old were you? When did that happen?
It was in high school, and I was of the age where of the generation where I would come home and I would just put on the Food Network, and I was
Me
enamored. I think
too. Yeah.
it's another reason why I hysterically cried when Rachel Ray was supportive, because like I would come home and I would put on and I would watch. I remember it was Ina Garten, and then right after Ina was Giada, and then right after Giada was Rachel, and I would watch them back to back to back almost every day.
Hmm.
And I would do my homework in front of the TV, watching their shows. And I've always had this I've had two obsessions in my life, and it's food and pop culture.
Hmm.
And whatever was in the zeitgeist when it came to pop culture, I was in it. Reality television, I was really at that forefront, like Surreal Life and like Flavor of Love and all of these shows that were starting to push the bounds what it meant to be a public figure and put yourself out authentically, and what made good television, what made good drama, and what didn't work. And then Housewives, and that was all happening at the same time as I was watching the super cookie cutter Food Network and obsessed with it. And what was the equation for a good episode of Barefoot Contessa or of Giada? And
Mm.
to me, it was, whether I knew it or not then, it is what has kind of directed my path now and for the last, I don't know, decade.
Well, it's so funny because I'm a different generation than you, but it's the same story for me, except I would watch the Food Network every day after school, and it would be Sarah Moulton, Sarah's
Yeah.
Secrets, Mario Batali, not great anymore,
Uh-uh.
but I learned so much watching his show. I think Ina was on around then. They used to show the Two Fat Ladies, which I loved. If you've never seen it, that is the greatest cooking show of all time. It's fantastic. But yeah, it's the same idea as like just watch. And I think with Ina in particular, it was funny because her show at the beginning was all about her world. It was about her like friends and her dinner parties and Susan Stroman coming over and her gay gardener and her gay florist. And now it's like very controlled. It's very like just little snippets of her in her kitchen and her barn and like cutaways to like making the potatoes. But I just love that idea of like hosting and having people over and parties. So I totally get that as a big influence. So you cooked in high school. So one thing like for me and my family, like I felt like cooking was gendered, even though my mom never cooked. I felt like it was discouraged because I was a boy. And I'm curious, like in your family, was that ever a thing? So it sounds like you came from
No,
a pretty liberal family.
very. And I mean, I had two working parents, so oftentimes we had to kind of fend for ourselves when it came to dinner. And I think it really all ties into the being heavy, the not being popular, community. And I found it almost like an addiction when I started hosting these parties and seeing the reaction that people had to me cooking for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that feeling of connection, that feeling of community, that feeling of the exchange of the transaction of hospitality and love.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's healthy or not, like that's not what I'm here to talk about. What I am
No,
here to
that's
talk about is the
interesting.
fact
Yeah.
that it was something that I couldn't get enough of. I
Well, it
couldn't
sounds
get
like
enough.
your body or feeling self-conscious growing up, like you felt like you were the object of ridicule. And then uh now it's sort of like you're the opposite, like you're the object of desire. It's like, people want what you're giving, what you're offering. It's sort of like food and all of this is like transformed how you feel about yourself and your role in society.
Which is why, like, again, I did Danielle, I did all the fancy restaurants, I've done the magazines where it's crazy, complicated recipes and all this stuff. None of it does it for me like
Mm-hmm.
recipe and cooking, and the everything I put out there is with the intention that you are cooking for others, that you are
Mm-hmm.
extending hospitality, that you are creating a moment to share a meal with
Mm-hmm.
people you love. And that is always the first thought in everything I do.
So is your family, you mentioned that they were secular, but now that this is such a huge part of your life, do they come to your Shabbat dinners? Have they become more ritualistic or observant
I
because of you?
mean, I will say it's like, for example, like my grandmother, my uncle, they're all they're quite religious. My dad, no. My grandmother, who unfortunately passed at the beginning of last year,
I'm sorry.
we were very, very close, very close. She was the one of the biggest influences in my life, because she was this woman who was a poor Jewish girl from Brooklyn who had big dreams and worked her way up and was not educated. And then when she sent my father to college, she went to college at the same time, but went on to
Wow.
get her master's. She's done everything from run like the methadone clinic at Beth Israel here in the city, to working in advertising, being a secretary, and then she like became a realtor in like when she was 60 or in her 50s, and then had a 30-year career as a big realtor.
Amazing.
And she left Park Slope. I was very blessed to grow up with my great grandmother, who lived until 102, from 1898 to 2001 or
Wow.
two. And when she passed, my grandmother was like, I'm fulfilling this dream. And she moved to Fifth Avenue, right in the Village. And she was the first person who exposed me to culture, who would take me to these nice restaurants and to go see movies,
Mm-hmm.
and everything in the city that was so like next level. And we do high holidays every year with her and her best friend, who is prominent in the Jewish world. So that was our ritual, and it still is, even though she is not with us. But for my immediate family, the Shabbats were happening at my mother's apartment, because I don't know about you, but I live in a New York apartment. I have a table that
I
could fit a
see.
lot of people.
I
So I was
see.
using and to be fair, I live in the same apartment building as my mother and my sister. Not anymore. My mother just moved 2 blocks away, so she's still
Okay.
in the
So you got
area.
some space. Yeah.
But I was doing it out of her apartment because she had a table that could fit 12, and it was really amazing, because my family got to come, and then like a lot of Alex's family who's in the city has come, and then his family's on this. A lot of his family is in the city as well. So doing Shabbat has been this great bonding experience for bringing our families together, and then also
Mm-hmm.
incorporating my family with my friends, because that's something that's very important to me, is that my friends know and love my sister and her husband, because they're our best friends, and
Mm-hmm.
same with my husband's brother and his wife. They're our best friends as well. So to share that in this community we've built was very important to us. And I do think that there has been an increased desire to explore Jewish ritual. I don't think anyone's become more religious, because I don't think we're more religious. I think we are more intentional about making space for Judaism and these rituals, but not necessarily letting it dictate our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And can say that that's probably a similar vibe with the rest of our families.
So if I was to host a Shabbat dinner, I know I would probably make challah bread.
Yeah.
What else would I make?
So one of the key things when I was doing the book was like, I wanted the whole book to be something that people could make multiple recipes at once and not freak out, because there's nothing, no, there should be no stress when it comes to entertaining or throwing a dinner party. But what you do have to do is then put some thought into it of what's happening. And the best part is, so much of Jewish food, so much of at least many of the core dishes of the Ashkenazi, Mizrahi, Sephardic communities are
Wait,
dishes
Mizrahi,
that,
like Isaac Mizrahi?
like Isaac Mizrahi. Here's the thing: most people don't know. that people pretty much define like, oh, you're either Ashkenazi, or if you're not Ashkenazi, you're Sephardic, and that's something that happens all the time. It's not actually true. The Sephardim are the Jews of Spain that
Hmm.
then went to the North Africa, and they're a specific sect. But Mizrahi Jews are the Jews that never left the Middle East.
Hmm.
So these
That's
are
a real
the
thing.
Jew.
I didn't know that.
Yes, these are the Jews that stayed in Israel, Palestine. These are Jews that stayed in Iran, in Iraq, and in all of these countries. Well, at least where the borders are currently drawn. But um, so much is, it's like people can't put current day borders on these history lessons when it was like all the Persian Empire. Or then you think of the, like, how did the Jews end up in Europe? Well, it's because the Romans knocked down the temple and took tens of thousands of Jewish slaves back
Right.
to Italy. And all of this helps really explain um, the movement of Jewish people, a lot of it rooted in trauma, and how that's affected our foodways and the way that we've maintained ritual but adapted to where we've been. And sometimes it's tough because you have people that don't want us to claim certain foods or certain things that have become absorbed into our tradition based on circumstances that were frankly not part of our control.
Right.
But the other side of that is this really, really, really beautiful way to look at how broad Jewish food is and can be, and how the rituals have lasted. But that's a long way to come back to it. All of these communities, again, were keeping the Sabbath. So it was dishes. There were dishes that had to cook low and slow because
Mm.
they would throw it in pretty much like the dying embers of the bread oven, and they would pick it up so they could have a warm meal on Shabbat. So when I think of Shabbat, I'm thinking of cholent and brisket, or these Persian stews that, like, they don't taste good or as good if you serve it the same day you make it. You got to let it cool down, pop it in the fridge,
Right.
and then reheat it. So that's always been my
Yeah,
mentality,
I
is have
love
one of
braising,
those.
so that's great. That's perfect.
It's always braising. Braising is a Jew's best friend.
Even in summer.
Oh, of course. I mean, like, it's funny. I've been talking about. I. I always feel so weird about it because I don't want to like name drop, but like,
Name drop, do
I
it.
no, but it's another thing. I have become close with Katie Couric over the past year. She's been very supportive of the book,
Great.
and her, like many people, had gotten a cold. I feel like everyone's seeing people. She got her first cold. So I made her matzo ball soup and dropped it off at her apartment. And I posted and I did a recipe video because I've been seeing so many people get sick, and I was like, all right, well, like, I named it as like, this is hot soup summer, because I don't
Ah,
believe that like soup needs to be just for the cold months. I
funny.
love matzo ball soup all year
Yeah,
round. Like,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
having hot soup. I'm
Right.
having hot soup in the summer too. Just like, you turn on
Right.
the air conditioning, I'm not gonna like.
You need to make a t-shirt, Hot Soup Summer.
That's coming soon.
Oh
Stay
yeah,
tuned.
coming
Stay
soon.
tuned.
Stay
Stay
tuned.
tuned. Stay tuned.
Wow, Jake, you're like, and I should ask. I mean, so you are a TikTok sensation. Is that true? I mean, I don't even understand TikTok. This is a generational thing, but like, I watch your videos on Instagram when they show up, the similar kind of thing. But it's like you're showing the food, you're narrating and stuff. So how much work goes into those?
I mean, it's the same work as this is no different than when I was pitching recipes and concepts to different food publications to have a byline everywhere. It's the same amount of work, same amount of mentality, if not more, because I'm the one who's like shooting and editing it
Yeah.
versus having a team. Um, but one of the things we talked about, the old gatekeepers, they're still there. They might not be so old, but they're still gatekeepers. People telling you your ideas are good, your
Oh
ideas are
yeah.
bad. We actually don't want that.
Oh yeah. All the
Eh.
ones at the New York
And
Times are not a fan of mine. I've been pitching them forever. It's
I mean,
never
but
happened.
that's like what I have come to terms with, is like, I would rather put my stuff out on the internet, and with the beauty of things like TikTok and Instagram Reels, is I can get more views and eyes and impressions on a recipe that I post on my own account than if I get it published in one of these legacy publications.
That's incredible. I mean,
And
that's really, really true and cool. And I think I experienced that in the early days with food blogging, because I would do my food blog stuff and people would pay attention and they would be like, oh, what? I have my own platform. Like, why would I, kowtow
that's
to
it.
these powerful people?
And I've done so much of the pandering to what they're going to like in the SEO and
Yeah.
this and that, and like, oh, can we workshop it? Can we greenhouse this into something more in line with what our audience likes? So we got their audience. Like, well, actually, go fuck yourself, because I'm going to do what I like, and I have built a community of people that feel the same way about food and cooking, and I don't need the world to love me. I don't need to be
Yeah.
everyone's favorite chef. I'm not looking to take over the world. I would rather have a smaller community of people that see eye to eye with my thoughts on hospitality, on cooking, on all of these things, and have that conversation and dialogue with them on the internet versus focusing on being America's sweetheart. Because guess
Hmm.
what? I also am a strong believer that if everyone loves what you're doing, you're not making an impact.
Mm.
You have to, like, it just has to be both ways. I am some people's cup of tea, and for other people, they don't get it, or they don't like it, or it's not for them, and that's fine.
Are the people who don't like you mostly Jewish people who don't like how you're representing
Oh,
Jewish?
no, 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 no,
No.
no. I get that sometimes. Again, most of them, I know it's like good for. It's still good for the Jews. They might give me some. They might give me some slack. It's like, oh, what a shanda! You have pork.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
but at the end of the day, I think that that's the beauty of food media, is that it's so vast,
yeah.
and
Hmm.
there can be
And it's
one of everyone.
democratic.
In
It's like, yeah,
more than one of everyone. I think it's so horrible that traditional food media has created this idea that one person has to represent a cuisine or a nationality or
yeah,
any of these things, acting like I could represent all of the Jews at once.
yeah.
There are Jewish communities across Africa, India, China, all of Europe and the Middle East, and to have one person be the face of Jewish food, it is terrible.
So if
That
the New
is
York Times
why.
called you up tomorrow and said, we want you to be the new face of Jewish food for the New York Times, you would say no?
Oh, no, no, I'm gonna say, yeah. I mean, gotta play the game. Gotta play the game. The Times are calling, doing the ten essential Jewish
I
recipes.
love that rant, and then like mid rant, like pivot.
The Times is the only one that would call. If the Times called and said, do 10 essential Jewish recipes, I'm in. But in general, I think that the idea behind it is, it's less so about whether I would do it to represent the Jews. It's more
Right.
so that I don't think that one person can represent everything, and that's why I found such incredible camaraderie and community of other Jewish food writers, and the power of the Joe Nathans and the Adina Sussmans and the Leah Koenigs and Mike Salmanov and all of these people that have such different and important views on Jewish food and
Hmm.
perspectives, and what they add to this conversation, the more the better. I think
Well,
that
yeah,
I am of a generation that is focusing on celebration and lifting up other voices. And I think that there's something so important. I think so much of my beginning experience in food media were people who've been so burned by this idea that you were pinned against each other, and there could only be one winner of who was going to get the job, who was going to get the story, who was going to get that.
right.
And that wasn't in the Jewish space. So that was just in general, like food editors,
Hmm.
of people who were truly, truly vicious.
Yeah,
Everyone was vicious.
yeah,
And it's like, the fact is, some of these people, most of them whom I don't speak to anymore, just like, they they decided they wanted to play that game, and I just don't think that anything in the realm of negativity needs, like food and what we do. We're not curing cancer. We're
yeah,
not fixing the world. We're making the world a more delicious place. We're helping inspire people to create community. We're doing some
yeah.
really great work, but like, let's not get it twisted. Like,
Sure.
we need to take this pretty lightly.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
also
that's
like you
why it's
created
like,
your own game, like you created your own thing, and that's, I mean, I relate to that because of, my like Instagram and my Substack. I mean, doing Substack feels so liberating. It's like I am literally only writing to people who want to read what I have to write. It feels so
God
nice.
bless.
Yeah. By the way, when you listed all the Jewish food writers who are out there, do you know Roberts is my last name, but it was changed from Rothenberg during World War II?
So common. That's in my family. There were Heilberg. The My mother's main name is Heilberg, and half the family changed it to Hilburn
Mm-hmm.
to sound less Jewish.
Oh,
In my
interesting.
husband's family, it was it's right now it's Daniel, but it was a Zaire. But when they moved to Iran, some of them changed it to Aziz Far. It's this constant story, and like, again,
Yeah.
it's current. It's in the news right now with the interview on the cutting room floor, which is another kind of conversation about that. But
Wait, what do you mean? I don't even know what you're talking about.
there was this podcast with an interview with the founder of Man Repeller, and it was this. You'll just have to look it up because I don't need to be like talking about it. I just think that's a really interesting conversation on the discussion of Jews and assimilation, and whether that, like, what role does that play in our conversations about identity, and if we need to be changing our names to have any sort of respect or ability to have success in this country. And that's why it's like, I am very proud that I have a very Jewish last name.
Yeah.
I'm very proud that I have a very Jewish nose, and I grew up in a community
I got that.
in which
I definitely have that for sure.
I was, and like for good, my husband and I both grew up with this mentality that like, oh, we should get nose jobs because this is not the standard of beauty here. And now I love that I have a big Jewish nose. I love that I have a
Schnoz. That's the name of your next cookbook. Schnoz. My mom used to say at the table, would be like having dinner. She'd be like, "No, there's nothing wrong with a boy getting a nose job," and she would just say it. I guess we were like, "Okay."
But it's so commonplace, and it becomes ingrained in us and our society that that's what you have to do in order to just have the just baseline. That's the stuff you got to do.
And I own my nose, and you own yours, and I think that's healthy. Well, Jake, we're almost at the end of the interview, and I always start the podcast with "What did you have for lunch?" But I end it with "What are you having for dinner tonight?"
So there are two options. I have a bunch of corn, and I've been really into like sautéing it and doing it cacio e pepe style with pasta. So just like pretty much cacio e pepe with corn, which is great. Most likely we're going to get high and order Thai food. But I mean, it's like it's choose your own adventure for tonight. One will be for tonight, one will be for Shabbat for tomorrow. And who knows?
Couldn't you get high and make the corn cacio e pepe?
Yeah, but it comes down to if I want to. If I'm feeling like it depends on if I'm feeling it. Because people always like, oh, do you cook every meal? Like this like a wind up toy. And at the end of the day, it's like I cook a lot because I love to cook. And there are moments that I don't want to cook. And we are so blessed to live in the culinary capital of the universe.
So when you cook like corn cacio e pepe, do you separate like your video making from the cooking you do at home for you and your husband, or like how does that all work?
It depends. Like it depends on the moment. I try to use a lot of meals as opportunities for testing, especially I'm working on book 2.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
It's and like that book 1 was done the same way of like Shabbats are the way that I test these recipes because I need to see how they look in action. So it's a balance. So for example, if I'm doing this tonight, then most likely, again, it's going to be dark, not ideal. I do have a light, but the whole thing is this will be more so just for testing the recipe, getting the timing, getting the balance of ingredients right. And then I would make it again during the day at some point next week. And then that's what you would see on the internet.
So you
just to make sure.
You shoot your TikToks during the day.
Ideally, again, it's like I'm blessed that I don't have like a day job. But my day job is
that
doing
makes
this
a lot of
stuff
sense.
And writing books.
Because my thing is like my Instagram is like I do stories as I cook at night, but they're not like
I love your stories. I love them.
Thank you.
Them. Oh my God. It's just like I always want to be there because you give the true vibe of the dinner party, and then it's like who's coming, and then it's like all right, playing like either typically it's gay geography of like, oh my God, he has them at the party. Like, oh my God.
Well, you'll have to come over for dinner next time you're in LA.
Would love that.
Well, I'm going to see you on Tuesday. So, and by the time people hear this, we'll have already had lunch. So don't try to stalk us.
They'll see it on Instagram. We would have posted it.
Yeah, you would have posted it. Yeah. But Jake, thank you so much for doing this. Mazel tov on your book, and everyone who's listening, go out and buy Jewish if you haven't already. And I'll see you soon.
Can't wait.
All right. Thanks, Jake.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
All right. I'll see you Tuesday.
All right. See ya.